Thank you, Hian Sing. Next up will be a panel discussion entitled Manchester's Impact on Singapore. This evening, we have 5 panelists from diverse backgrounds who will discuss some interesting issues on the development of the relationship between the University of Manchester and Singapore. I will now pass over the session to our moderator, Mr. Alex Chan.
Over here. Maybe you can... Right. Maybe you can try to test the mic to see whether everything works. We are over here, Stephen. Okay. Right. Bear with us.
Hello.
Right. Testing. Oh, that's all right now.
Okay.
Hi. Maybe you can turn on the mic as well. All right. It was a very lively session, but
Testing.
oh, right. Very lively session. I think let's keep the mood lighter. But today, I think what we'll do here is we'll introduce the panel today. I think Professor Martin Humphries has really no need to introduce him anymore, right? On my right is Professor Stephen Flint, right? He's Associate Dean Internationalisation for Faculty of Engineering and Physical Science. We have Professor John Costello, right? Nursing Program Director, collaboration between the University and Singapore Institute of Technology. And on my left, immediately on my left is Mr. John Yip, right? He's the Regional Head, Debt Capital Markets, First Gulf Bank. And on my immediate left is Senior Alumni and Committee Advisor as well, Mr. Bill Lui. He's the Chairman and Managing Director for Stream Global Private Limited. Right, I think there was some stats already. In Singapore, there are 4,000 over alumni members, right? And at a global level, there are 200 over 1,000, nearly 300,000 based in over 200 countries. And in Singapore alone, there are very senior alumni and there are, in fact, great statesmen. For example, we have our Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Teo Chee Hean, right? And many important corporate figures as well. So I think the first question would be, for the last 60 years, we have produced many important alumni members for Singapore. Right? What will the future bring in terms of Manchester education and the relevance in terms of the Singapore context? Maybe this question, I'll pass it to Professor Humphries.
Thanks. Well, that's you could give a long answer to that question. I think the main way I see it is by continuing what we've done successfully in recent years. As I mentioned in my introduction, there are a large number of overseas students at the University of Manchester already, and I think certainly I could probably speak for all UK universities. They'd like to grow that number. And I think we feel we've got a high quality product. I think that product will evolve. The mode of delivery of education is changing. I think we're well aware of that, and steps are underway to change that. But the experience the students will get, the employability rates are very high, and I think something must be working well in the sense that the students are voting with their feet and coming to Manchester. So we'll continue the way we're going, I think, and we'd like to do a lot more.
Right. There's this specific area in terms of life sciences, right? And looking at that, in terms of Singapore, in the last 10 years, we are trying to build a life sciences hub, right? And it's something that we believe that it will propel us in terms of Singapore forward in the next 50, 100 years. I mean, this is really one of our key pillars, right? We've even built a city over it. It's called Biopolis, right? Which, if you're not aware, right? So this is something that maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what we've been doing with in this life sciences area in Singapore.
So I think we recognise the same thing and recognised it several decades ago when we created university structures around life sciences. Those structures are evolving and they're changing again over the next year. Because we recognise the key interface that life sciences has, both with health and disease, but also with biotechnology, as you've seen in a couple of the videos. In a way, what the link with Singapore for life sciences stemmed from a discussion we had in the Faculty of Life Sciences about the partnerships that we'd like to establish across the globe. And so we looked for places that were complementary to us, that were high quality, and then we attempted to establish partnerships with them. One of the best ways to do that is to pioneer the partnerships with PhD training programs. So we have one in place with the Weizmann Institute in Israel, and actually the first one was the link with A Star. So I had fantastic chats with Birgit Lane, who's in the audience, who gave us advice on how to engage with the A Star Graduate Academy. And I'm pleased to say that was quite a facile process to get the program set up. And it's really nice to see, the students actually now approaching, the first cohort of students approaching their final year. So we start in life sciences, but now it's broadened out to the other two science faculties as well. And the representatives from all three in the room today, and they've been at the symposium. What we're going through now is not only broadening across all of the interfaces in the university, but we want to develop greater research links and industrial links as well, so business engagement links. So that's been part of the agenda for this visit as well. The first steps, I think we've got to do a lot more, but there's so many talented people, I think, in both institutions that there are many opportunities.
Right. So I think this is, again, you've got a very good entry point into the next thing that we would like to talk about, which is engineering. Right. There's a very interesting program that we sort of know about. Is MSc Project Management Program, right, which is a collaboration between NTU and Rolls-Royce and the university. Maybe Professor Flint, you can elaborate a little bit about this program.
Yes, by all means. Firstly, just to follow up on what Martin was saying, a main reason I'm with the group this week here in Singapore is to investigate extending the highly successful PhD scheme that Life Sciences has put together with A Star into engineering and physical sciences. And I've had some very positive discussions with colleagues in A Star, also in NTU this week, and tomorrow I'll be visiting NUS. So we hope to broaden the remit of that successful program. The other program that has been mentioned is an interesting one. This is project management. So in engineering, as many of you know, many of you are indeed products of engineering at Manchester. We've got a long history, proud history of engineering. But it's not just, these days in particular, it's not just the mathematics and the technical side of engineering. It's dealing with these very large engineering projects, be that high-speed rail, tunnels under seaways, airports, etc. And the program that we developed with NTU, I find it fascinating. I was talking to our co-directors of the program on Monday in NTU, and this is a program that targets project managers in work. So it's a part-time program. In fact, it takes a minimum of 3 years part-time. They bring their own expertise to the program, and it's been set up in collaboration with industrial partners. In fact, the founding partner was Rolls-Royce, and Rolls-Royce, of course, has a big presence here in Singapore, and we've been working with Rolls-Royce for many years in the UK. The program is now over 100 students, and it's a modular program. We even charge fees by the module, actually, so people can take it at their own pace. The first graduates we're expecting in 2016. It's already attracting students from surrounding countries, which of course is no surprise to us because of Singapore's power as this regional hub, of course, for higher education in Southeast Asia. So students are coming from Vietnam in particular, Thailand as well. And we're also looking at adding on aspects to the program which people can sort of take if it fits their their current agendas. So one of which is nuclear, and South Korea is very interested in that aspect. So there's an evolution to this program. We're really only in the infancy of it. Fantastic range of students from a big range of companies, and it's something we're very proud of.
That sounds like a program that is for people who are already within the industry, or is something that they take part-time, or how does that really work?
That they have to already be a project manager in industry, and then it's an upskilling and broadening process for them.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, project management, that is something that I personally would have experience in all things technology, but there is still the process, the people that is involved. So project management itself is, I think, is a very important topic where sometimes you can't really learn, right? But I think it's really to experience and all the different aspects. Well, all right, and other than in terms of Manchester, we are famous for our own engineering. There's something else that I sort of discovered, and that the university is actually a pioneer in terms of the nursing program. And it is the first university in England to establish a nursing degree, and that is in 1969. That's a very interesting fact, right? So maybe this is a question for Professor Costello, right? And you are the nursing director of the program, right, in Singapore. Now, how do you see the future of such a program, not just in Singapore, but maybe at a global level? And how would this propel the nursing profession itself for the individual and also for the entire industry?
Well, I think there are two parts to your question. But first of all, we've been, as a university, we've been in Singapore since 2011. We've had 220 graduates to our program, which is a 2-year full-time graduate program. I think there are three major challenges. I think, first of all, we bring to the table in Singapore our reputation, which I don't want to go on about. I mean, Martin has made it very clear. We also bring with us a rich research and teaching background, and I think what we're offering diplomates in Singapore is the opportunity to develop research and also to innovate in practice. I think there are certain things, for example, the global problem of HIV and AIDS and other communicable diseases. I think there's the problem of the aging population, which is termed in Singapore the silver tsunami. And also, I think there's the problem of mental health and long-term conditions. As people get older, the problems faced by families with patients with conditions like multiple sclerosis, motor neurons disease, and dementia. They throw up all kinds of challenges. And I think what the course that we have in Singapore does is it focuses both the individual on what their role is. So what we try to do, apart from operate a very high-class graduate program, we shape individuals to become leaders, to become researchers, and to become administrators and teachers of the future. So our aim is really to not only provide education, but also to kind of raise awareness. My experience in the last 5 years of Singapore is that it's a very medically dominated healthcare system where nurses don't have anywhere near the degree of autonomy and, to a certain extent, freedom that we enjoy in the UK and in Western society. I think that in Singapore, nurses have a lot to learn. There's a kind of hunger for both knowledge and also a desire amongst Singaporean nurses to move on, to push up, which is very much part of the Singapore ethic. You know, can do. We want to move on. And I think what the course offers is the opportunity for nurses to become leaders through our Manchester Leadership Programme, through the leadership courses that we run, through the research, through the ethics, and also through the change management courses, which we kind of grasp the idea of what needs to be changed and how you need to develop critical analysis, which is probably the hardest thing that people need to grasp. The analysis of what needs to be changed, how can we change it? How do we assert ourselves? So from the individual point of view, nurses need to grasp the nettle. Nurses need to kind of push themselves forward. They need to challenge. And I think that's what the course does over and above provide a very high standard of education. And collectively, the nursing profession in Singapore needs to collectively adopt a very robust challenge to some of the kind of health problems and say, no, it's not just doctors that have the answers. Because with a long-term condition, many people will know that it's not just about the science of the disease like cancer, but it's survivorship. It's how you experience cancer. And what people do for you and with you when you have cancer makes a difference. And that is where nurses are. And that is a global challenge, not just a local one.
You something that you point out, which is very interesting. You mentioned about there's a key difference between the West and the East, and nurses in Singapore used to have the attitude of can do. What would you say would be the key difference in terms of, say, from this part of the world and where you come from?
I think the key differences are nurses in the UK have been professionalised for various reasons. They feel able, they feel empowered to challenge. I think in Singapore there's a certain reticence, there's a kind of anxiety about challenging things. And I think what a graduate program does is it gives people the ability, the knowledge, and the confidence to challenge. And I think that is more than anything a key requirement of nurses in Singapore. That they challenge, they ask questions. And this is what I spend a lot of my time doing, getting students to kind of grasp the nettle, which they find quite difficult to do. But at the end of it, they say, you know, I've learned quite a lot, but it's been a painful experience. But, you know, no pain, no gain.
Right, that's very interesting. I mean, given the I'm sure that in terms of nursing, this is something that I personally feel that in terms of the value, in terms of how we perceive nurses, is very different. I mean, nurses, teachers, I think these are professions that are very, very key and very, very important. But somehow, there's this term that I would put in as the economic viability in terms of the profession itself. But I'm sure if you have a program like that can elevate the nurses and the entire profession, I think general perception would really increase for maybe even at a global level. And in terms of history, Bill is a graduate since in the 1960s, and I think nobody here can be more qualified to talk about in terms of the different eras that the evolution of the Manchester throughout the years. So maybe that's in your opinion, Bill, right? How do you feel that has Manchester and the university has evolved throughout the years, and what do you feel that to move forward, what does the university need to do again to stay relevant, maybe especially in the Singapore context or even the Asian context?
Thanks, Alex. I think he's trying to make me out to be a dinosaur.
Sorry.
Almost fossilized.
Wise man.
Well, I went to the university in the 60s, and I think Manchester in those days were really very popular university. In fact, I know that among my peers, a lot of people want to go to Manchester. And of course, the reputation is in hard sciences and engineering and so on. But there were other courses. And I think today, when I saw some of the statistics, Manchester is still very popular. You know, in fact, one of the top few universities that students, wants to get into. And I think that speaks to the choices of subjects, right, that's offered. So you have a variety of disciplines, as well as you could actually specialize. And I think that is both breadth and depth. And I think this is why a lot of students from this part of the world still, want to go to Manchester. But as pointed out earlier, I think the university needs to continuously adapt, to the needs of the requirements of society. And I'm actually, it was pointed out earlier that today you have life sciences and you have material science, which during my time, those terms doesn't exist, all right? Although material science was there. So I think the university has actually, broadened, its scope and offering a lot more choices. So I think this trend needs to continue. As to the MBA type courses, I think it's difficult to be all things to all men. All right, you've got to offer. My view is offer something generic, but then select, the special electives, whether it's in risk management or derivatives, whatever it is, and be good in those, and hopefully you pick the winners. All right. So to me, I'm very encouraged with the progress that Manchester has made.
Oh, I think again, coming from my point of view, it's great to see so many collaborations coming from different disciplines and to be here as well, all sitting here in this panel, right? But and if you look at in terms of the commercial collaboration or look at the commercial sector, in terms of British companies, there's about 1,000 British companies here in Singapore, 1,000, right? And in terms of population, right, you have about 30,000 British residents living here in Singapore, right? You have companies BP, Shell, the Rolls-Royce, so on and so forth, right? Again, this is please jump in. This question really here is that even I, with the alumni, is thinking about this particular question. So on behalf of alumni, we really want to know, we really want to see how we can think about what can the university do to lay the foundations for more trade and more businesses between specifically Manchester and Singapore.
One thing that we're increasingly doing in the university is working very closely with the city of Manchester itself. Long gone are the days of the ivory tower, certainly in our city, and the partnership between the cities of Manchester's investment division and also its international division is very close. I chair our strategic committee on relations with India, and on that committee we have somebody from Manchester City Council, and we would have never thought to do that sort of thing even a few years ago. So partnership between the university and its city in looking to Singapore, to Singapore's universities, to Singapore's industry and government, I think in the end it's all about partnership, and we're, I think, a lot better than we used to be at these broader partnerships. So that would be my first thought on that.
Professor Humphries.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the previous question as well, and I think the key point is the universities need to evolve. So the overall mission stays the same. We need to generate knowledge and pass that on to others. But the way you do that is changing. So in terms of generating knowledge, it's no longer the domain of an individual person. Team-based research is on all of us, and that means not only teams within a university, but teams across the globe, and that involves industry as well. So I think having research conducted with staff cheek by jowl with industrialists is the way forward. And education is changing as well because of the internet, of course, and the way that shapes the availability of knowledge.
Bill.
I think, looking at what's happened the last 2 days, where the university for the first time has brought out, researchers, scientists, at a symposium. I think if you could bring along also the companies, that has a relationship with the research and then through the symposium and networking with the local, for example, Singapore companies. And then the local companies and the British companies can then, develop a relationship, right? And I think this can be a two-way thing. Singapore companies can also participate in symposium. So that's one way. I think that university can act as a catalyst. And again, I think you should tap on the strength of the alumni, because there are a lot of alumni who are in related industry and businesses, which can also help to foster this, two-way trade or collaboration. I think that can be a very positive way.
And I personally think that this is what I think one of those things that alumni can do, because we can be the very bridge, right? I personally have a couple of businesses. I've never thought about going back to, Manchester. So I think sometimes you need a reason, you need a catalyst, and something to start off the spark, right? To find a reason to go back, right? And this is, I think, and the alumni here, I think in Singapore is 4,000 over, and throughout the years, and it's a rich resource. For not just for the city of Manchester, but also for the university. Just for example, there's a Manchester company, right, that the Singapore government engaged. They are called Future Everything, right? They were engaged actually to have a week of a digital festival for the SG50, which is a celebration for Singapore. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity in terms of collaboration between the company, and I think the alumni and the university can work together to foster such a relationship. I think this is a start, but I truly believe that maybe 3 years down the road, I could be back in Manchester doing some business, right? Right. And of course, Manchester, the word Manchester means a lot to us, but to the rest of the world, basically, it means two colors, right? One is red, and the other one recently would be blue. Well, I stayed off Main Street before, so I'm sort of blue, and I'm red for one day because it was 1999, and for safety reasons, United won the European Cup. I had to be a United fan, right? But this question that we sort of ask ourselves is football ever a reason, right, to apply for a university place back in Manchester? Yeah. Is that, I mean, maybe some alumni or maybe a raise of hands that you will actually consider going back to Manchester, studying in Manchester. Was football ever a reason? So who's a United fan here?
Yeah, me.
Shame on you. I can't believe anybody would choose to go to a city for the football, to study for the university. What I would say, though, is I do a lot of interviewing of school kids, who are looking to choose a university for their course. And the number one reason, I'm sure this is true for all universities, the number one reason that students select is largely based on the excellence of the teaching they're going to get, which, of course, will be research-informed. But very rarely do I interview a school kid who doesn't know about Manchester United and football, but I've never met anybody who has chosen the university for that reason, and I'd be horrified if they did.
Can I prove you wrong? Actually, I must admit, I'm a lover of football, an ardent supporter of Man U, and one of my main reasons of going to Manchester is Manchester United. But the other reason, of course, is Manchester University in those days, in the 60s, offered a very good engineering course. And also Manchester was also an industrial city. All right? So, and then when I compared it to Liverpool, London, they don't have campus life. So, when you put all these things together, it was an obvious choice for me. So, by the way, during my time Man U was called the Busby Babes, after Sir Matt Busby, all right, and the likes of Bobby Charlton, George Best, Dennis Law, Nobby Stow, names that you haven't heard of before, were really the stars in those days. I rest my case.
I really have to add in, being a Spurs fan, right? Yes, we are not going to win the championship, but I think maybe who's going to win? Well, this is okay. This is obviously going to be a very passionate question, right? Who is going to win the BPL? Is it going to be a Red, or is it going to be Manchester, or is it going to be in London? What do you think? Okay, if it's going to be Manchester, is it going to be blue or is it going to be red? Well, okay, I think this is a good time to close off the panel session, right? I don't think anybody's going to win out of this. But I think, thank you very much, the panelists here tonight. I think we really had a fantastic discussion, right? To end off, I think there's a token of appreciation that for the panelists. Maybe we can Heng Sing.